This is Hispanic Heritage.
Good evening. Welcome to our Hispanic Heritage Special. I'm Paul Cicchini.
And I'm Karina Rubio. Tonight, we're once again celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month.
We celebrate the histories, cultures, and contributions of American citizens whose ancestors came from Spain, Mexico, the Caribbean, and Central and South America.
And you can find some of those big celebrations at the U of I. The university is known for attracting students from all around the world, and that statement stood true over a century ago.
We've always fought really hard to make our presence known and to illuminate the vast amount of beautiful contributions that we've made.
There's no doubt that the U of I is an international hub in Champaign-Urbana, but just how long have Hispanic people of Latin America been present here? Well, the university dates the arrival of the first two students from Mexico to 1884. A Daily Illini article from that year even gave them a warm welcome, saying the university has an attraction for foreigners that we are glad to see. We now have Rodrigo Aguilera and Miguel Jurado.
It's not surprising that we saw Mexicans coming to the United States to be able to pursue education. We're seeing this at the end of the 19th century, which in Mexico we call this moment the Porfiriato.
Porfirio Diaz was president of Mexico. He pushed for industry and foreign investment.
If we look at what majors they were and what they were studying things like civil engineering, railroad engineering. They were studying modern technologies that they would then bring back to Mexico.
Renato Ignacio Rosaldo Hernandez was another U of I scholar who came later down the road. He taught Spanish to men at the Chinook base in Rantoul right around World War II.
The Mexican Air Force, particularly the Aztec Eagles, their elite, fighting Air Force planes, they were flying alongside the United States during World War II.
But today's Hispanic and Latino professors at the U of I say there's one thing to keep in mind about these early Mexican scholars. They had the money and the means.
These are wealthier Mexicans, white Mexicans at that.
Mexican students that went abroad to study, and they came to Illinois. But it doesn't have a Latino presence.
U of I professor Ronaldo Romero has a distinct definition for Latino presence.
We're focusing on the U.S. Latino population to people that have been acculturated or have been racialized in the U.S.
Romero says he thinks of Carlos Montezuma as an early key scholar. Montezuma was the first Native American student at the U of I. He had Mexican roots.
He was kidnapped by another tribe, and then he was sold, or he was adopted by this person from Illinois, and that's how he wound up here at the university.
And Professor Luis Leal, who retired from the U of I in the 1970s.
Leal kind of personified the trajectory of what was Mexican studies at the time to Latin American studies to Chicano studies.
Romero says people like Montezuma and Leal are more in line with the many students and teachers from diverse backgrounds who make up the university's Hispanic and Latino populations.
There is more representation now. So, for example, me. I'm the only Latina in the developmental science division, but I believe I'm the only one, or have been the only one in about 20-ish years.
U of I professor Ronaldo Romero is one of the founding members of the Latino-Latina Studies Department as they know it today. He says it's only been in existence for about 10 years. It started out as a minor, then major, and he says the next goal is PhD.
No PhD required when it comes to cooking, but during the pandemic, it takes a good mind to make it work when it comes to owning and operating a restaurant. North of here, there are a trio that are doing just that, and they just happen to be Latinas.
The rest of the world may have slowed down during the pandemic, but not here. This is lunchtime at Logan Square's Jibaritos y Más. Same story at Casa Yari.
I've never felt so much love in my life like I have in these past few months.
And they can't complain at Ponce Restaurant either. Consistency has been the key there.
When you believe and do something with your heart, todo te sale bien.
While COVID-19 has taken a toll on the restaurant industry, these three are thriving.
The first 2 months of the pandemic was extremely tough because we weren't busy at all.
luckily things have picked up. What's even more inspiring is that all three owners happen to be Latinas, women who took a chance on a small business.
Dame primero un bistec.
Yeritza Rivera came to Chicago from Venezuela 20 years ago.
Circunstancias de la vida, life circumstances.
She says she struggles with English, but despite that, she opened her restaurant a few years ago, even inspired her son to follow her footsteps.
We put fresh mango.
Yari Vargas has an incredible story of her own. She is Chicago's Queen of Flan, with more than 50 different recipes. COVID forced her to initially lay off staff.
I literally had to change the entire menu where I made it smaller so I could be able to handle the prepping by myself and be able to cook by myself.
She's getting workers back. All three women help solidify the role of minority women in small businesses. In the last 5 years, women-owned businesses grew by 21% nationwide, and in 2019, women of color made up half of all women-owned businesses.
I think this challenged me to get my creativity back out. I was like, you know what? I have to challenge myself. I have to look for resources that are available for me, available for the customer.
We'll get through this. Stay positive. Stay positive. That's all you could do.
And all three ladies have mastered that idea of staying positive, handling the pandemic with a smile. In Chicago, I'm Lourdes Duarte.
From 2006 to 2011, Hispanic restaurant ownership increased 42%.
And coming up,
it's amazing how life will sometimes be a full circle.
he was a fan of WGN and Tom Skilling growing up in rural Texas. How years later, he's become the only Latino chief meteorologist on a national level.
Flooring choices like stain-resistant carpets. It's just one of the many reasons to send your friends to Flooring America.
And right now, it's our spill-proof flooring sale. Get up to $1,000 off or interest-free financing on waterproof floors store-wide, including waterproof carpet, only at Flooring America.
The home office has taken on a new meaning. Let's update. Everything Amish handcrafted for the home. If you can envision it, we can build it. Learn more at prairiecommonscollective.com.
Thousands of memories will be placed on that end table. So choose one that will hold those memories longer. When you buy right, it stays right. Year after year, into the next generation. Wright's Furniture and Flooring, making you right at home.
The walls are closing in on Mike Madigan, but his machine keeps on running. Take Betsy Londrigan. Her campaigns, fueled by his lobbyist minions, set up a joint pact with a Madigan political organization. Londrigan's cash stained by the stench of corruption. Reports say the FBI investigated a Londrigan donor raiding his house. Imagine what Betsy Londrigan would do behind the walls of this house. Congressional Leadership Fund is responsible for the content of this advertising.
When your computers need upgrading or fixing, or your technology is letting you down, the local experts at Volo Internet and Tech are here to help. Let Volo fill the gaps in your company's IT department. Home or business, Volo is your tech company.
The attacks on Rodney are just ridiculous. I'm someone with a pre-existing condition and will have that for the rest of my life. The genetic form of cancer that I have can affect our children. They have that chance to have the same type of cancer that I do. Rodney, his ultimate goal is just to make sure that everybody has the health care that they want and the choices and the options that they choose. Rodney's willing to work across party lines to fight for better health care for all of us. It's personal to us.
I'm Rodney Davis, and I approve this message.
WCIA3's Hispanic Heritage continues now.
Welcome back to our Hispanic Heritage Show. If you've been following the rise of News Nation on WGN America, you may have noticed his friendly face.
His story breaks new ground for Latinos. Albert Ramon has become the only Latino chief meteorologist on national TV.
Active tornado warnings.
Albert Ramon will tell you he's been training for this practically his entire life.
After 13 inches up in Beeville and an additional 3 today.
This year, he became the chief meteorologist at News Nation. That alone is quite the accomplishment.
It's exciting. It's exciting stuff. It's pretty sweet.
But what makes this even sweeter is that he will be the only Latino chief meteorologist on a national level.
It makes me very proud. And there have been a lot of people that I've looked up to that have been an inspiration to me.
Recently, he made the move to Chicago for the job, and as he tours the Windy City, he remembers growing up a fan of Chicago's very own meteorologist, Tom Skilling.
It's amazing how life will sometimes be a full circle where, you know, Mr. Skilling is someone I've looked up to since I was a teenager, thousands of miles away.
Which puts Albert in Beeville, Texas, population of about 13,000. That's southern Texas, near Corpus Christi. His rise to national TV has already made headlines there.
All of my family, with the exception of myself and my brother, still live there. And we can go back and look at our Ancestry.com, and generation after generation after generation are Mexican-American Texans. Even tracing our roots to when that was still the state of Tamaulipas, northern Mexico.
Proud of his culture and his upbringing, he wants his story to inspire others, whether they're interested in weather or other fields.
There was enough snow today here in the northern counties.
And he remembers having a love for weather early on, watching national coverage on the damage the world saw after Hurricane Andrew in 1992. All these years, his parents have witnessed his unwavering dedication.
One Christmas, we got him a weather station.
Weather
station.
His room was a weather station. It still has a tag on his room on the door, Albert's weather room.
Albert's weather station is much bigger these days. He has a national platform, keeping track of weather for all 50 states, while also serving as a role model for so many.
Whether it's a conversation like on Zoom or FaceTime or just an email response of here's some resources, here's some links, I'm all about paying it forward. That's kind of where I am in my life right now.
In Chicago, I'm Lourdes Duarte.
And Albert is planning to give back in Chicago as well. He loves speaking in classrooms to young students about the role math and science can play in choosing a career. You can watch him on News Nation every weeknight from 7 to 10.
And coming up,
differences are not something that should keep us apart, but rather bring us together.
It's a celebration of the diversity of many cultures, which one has called the U of I home for more than 100 years.
For years, families have welcomed Rebath into their homes. With online consultations, we can still plan your bathroom remodel, and when we install, we'll keep your family safe. Call 217-280-4594 or go to rebath.com today.
Hi, my name is Rocio. I'm the Industrial General Labor Recruiter from the Rental Express office. We have industrial general labor positions with awesome benefits that include 401k, free life insurance, paid holidays, and a $400 conversion bonus. You can contact me at 217-892-4000. Get to know me and get to know Express.
Tungate Law Office has served the local community for over 40 years. Tungate Law Office is a trusted team, here to serve your legal needs. Call today, 815-432-4979.
The walls are closing in on Mike Madigan, but his machine keeps on running. Take Betsy Londrigan. Her campaigns, fueled by his lobbyist minions, set up a joint pact with a Madigan political organization. Londrigan's cash stained by the stench of corruption. Reports say the FBI investigated a Londrigan donor raiding his house. Imagine what Betsy Londrigan would do behind the walls of this house. Congressional Leadership Fund is responsible for the content of this advertising.
I'm
Betsy Dirksen-Londrigan, and I approve this message.
Scandals and special favors. Rodney Davis, another Illinois politician out for himself. The ComEd scandal. Davis took $64,000 from the CEO, executives, and PAC of a company that admitted bribery to keep rates high. The PPP loan debacle. Davis's family got to the front of the line for $1 million payout, and he voted to keep it secret, while businesses and families suffered. Rodney Davis. He wins, we lose.
How much Central Illinois can we squeeze into 1 hour? You'd be surprised. CI Living, weekdays at 4.
WCIA3's Hispanic Heritage continues now.
Hispanic Heritage Month celebrates the diversity of many cultures.
Some you can find at the University of Illinois. Demi Ramirez has more on the journey of Puerto Ricans to campus and how they have been keeping their culture alive.
Puerto Rican students have a long history at the University of Illinois. Decades ago, Puerto Rican nights at Lancer Hall were the place to be. Students would celebrate the religious Hispanic holiday, Three Kings Day.
This was an event organized by Puerto Rican students primarily, with some support from other students as well, we can assume. And this would be a night of food and music and discussion.
This is part of the University YMCA's International Supper, which later evolved into international dinners. Those are still around 30 years later.
One of the things that has been a long tradition for the last couple of generations has been our international dinners.
Illinois archives and yearbooks show Puerto Ricans have been on campus dating back to 1908 and have been waving their flag and yelling "Wepa" on campus ever since.
I think something really unique happens in that students very early on were prone to talking about where they're coming from.
That Hispanic identity could be seen through the handwritten and drawn flyers back in the 1950s. It could also be seen through the food that is served. Pasteles, arroz con gandules, delicious. Guayaba con queso and café con leche were all on the menu that night. All food and pastries many Puerto Ricans enjoyed and still enjoy to this day. Just like the love for salsa dancing and Spanish music, which was a big part of the culture.
I think the cultural nights are really exciting. And we still see them on campus today, too, right? We see the successors of these projects.
The Puerto Rican Student Association was founded in the 60s and is still active today. They continue to embrace Puerto Rican culture by hosting Latin nights and other cultural events.
You know, there's often a lot of jokes like, oh, Puerto Ricans have their flag everywhere. They have their pride everywhere. Like, people make fun of me, my phone case. Like, I rep. But for a reason, because it's a part of educating and showing why we care and why we're here.
It's something the University Y also embraces as they encourage others to understand the history and culture of Puerto Rican students.
Well, I think one of the things that's really unique about the University YMCA is for the last 100+ years, one of the main functions of the organization is to make sure that we're a welcoming campus. The differences are not something that should keep us apart, but rather bring us together and appreciate that fabric of diversity.
For Hispanic Heritage, I'm Demi Ramirez.
The YMCA used to host international dinners every week, but now it's in March every year. They're looking to do more with smaller events in hopes of creating more diversity and conversations about different cultures on campus. The U.S. Census found nearly 500,000 Latinos live just to the east of us in Indiana.
And many communities date back to the 19th century. Bershella Edme went through state archives and found out how a historian's own family tree tells the story of Latino Hoosiers.
Sometimes it's the little things that keep us rooted to our ancestors.
So we think she's from the 1930s.
A doll stitched together in the Hoosier State nearly 100 years ago.
So when we opened up the steam trunk, you know, there was a little tray and there was nothing but doll parts. So like heads, arms, and legs. And I'm like, what is this?
It was one Hoosier's act of kindness for her homeland, su patria, Mexico.
Her name is Maria Piconrez. Don't you forget it.
That's who took these doll parts and sewed them together for kids affected by war.
The profile is beautiful.
She's special to Indiana historian Nicole Martinez-Legrand because that's her great-great-grandmother.
Definitely made me very proud.
She was one of many Latinos who came to Indiana at the start of the 20th century.
There's push, there's pull, and there's stick. What is pushing these people out of their native homeland? What is pulling them into the United States? And what is making them stick into certain areas of our state?
As early as 1890, the census records Latinos in the U.S. By 1910, the Mexican Revolution pushed people to Indiana for safety and work.
Newspaper article here in Indianapolis says 100 Mexicans living in Indianapolis. And so this article talked a lot about the Mexicans here being university students.
Education later pulled more Latinos from Mexico and Central and South America to the Hoosier state.
These would be their children.
As an Indiana Historical Society staffer, Nicole researches Latino Hoosiers and their stories.
You know, they are the American story. They are the American dream. There is my grandfather.
After 2 years of work across the state, the Lake County native discovered her own family tree, rooted in Mexico and flourished in Indiana.
And that really has deepened my sense of pride, not only to be a Latina, to be of Mexican-American heritage, but to be a Latino Hoosier.
Her great-great-grandparents settled with their kids in Indiana Harbor probably around the 1910s. Nicole's great-grandmother later married Antonio Medina. The couple welcomed a baby boy, Nicole's grandfather.
And then also you see rail lines.
Like Nicole, her great-great-grandmother was proud and invested in this community.
So literally, this is the book that helped build the church.
With this ledger and fundraising, her great-great-grandmother helped build the state's first Latino Catholic church. That was in 1927. It still stands tall today, a reminder of what Latino Hoosiers have built.
We have been here for over 100 years. Latinos in Indiana have influenced anything from legislature, education, business, pretty much in all the sectors, whether you explicitly recognize it or not.
But Nicole really hopes you do see her and know somos Hoosiers también. We're Hoosiers too.
A lot of people wanted to be heard.
Reporting in Indianapolis, I'm Birchel Edman.
As of this year, there are more than 389,000 Latinos in Indiana.
Coming up next. Born in Mexico, he pioneered a fusion of rock and roll and Latin American jazz. Carlos Santana, among others, have played their Hispanic heritage all the way to the Hall of Fame.
Deeples Auto Group's been named Buick Dealer of the Year. I'm Ron Deeples. Right now, you can lease a 2020 Buick Encore GX for only $259 a month, or a Buick Envision for only $299 a month. If your vehicle doesn't have a Deeples sticker, you probably paid too much.
Many women are busy caring for their children and partner, but it's important they focus on their health as well. Annual exams are the best way to prevent health issues and identify problems early. Screenings, including pap smears, mammograms, and STD screenings, will help you detect illnesses early, when the chances for successful treatment are greatest. See your provider each year to discuss life changes that may impact your health, including diet, abnormal bleeding, or contraception. Stay well with Christie Clinic.
Protect your home with help from Menards. Seal your home against the elements with Quad Advanced Formula Outdoor Sealant. It can be applied to wet or dry surfaces, even at freezing temperatures. Only $4.49 after 11% rebate. Double down against those pesky leaks with Seal Best Roof Coating. It's easy to apply. Just roll, brush, or spray. A 4.75-gallon bucket is $54.99 after 11% rebate. Now at Menards. Save big money at Menards.
Deeples Auto Group's been named Buick Dealer of the Year. I'm Ron Deeples. Right now, you can lease a 2020 Buick Encore GX for only $259 a month, or a Buick Envision for only $299 a month. If your vehicle doesn't have a Deeples sticker, you probably paid too much.
Flooring choices like stain-resistant carpets. It's just one of the many reasons to send your friends to Flooring America.
And right now, it's our spill-proof flooring sale. Get up to $1,000 off or interest-free financing on waterproof floors store-wide, including waterproof carpet, only at Flooring America.
Music is is a universal language, bridging cultures and evolving through the contributions from people of different heritages.
And some of the greatest are honored and celebrated at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Located in downtown Cleveland on the shores of Lake Erie, the museum is celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month. They're highlighting inductees who helped shape the face of modern music.
Since the beginning of rock and roll, we've seen deep influences of Latino music.
With this electric guitar, a young Richie Valens wrote his smash hit reinterpretation of a Mexican folk song, La Bamba.
By introducing Spanish lyrics into a rock and roll song, even that in alone in 1958 hadn't been done before. So that was groundbreaking. That was innovative.
His contributions join those of other artists of Hispanic heritage who have their names etched in gold on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductee wall.
Vinny Lopez, a.k.a. Mad Dog of Bruce Springsteen's E Street Band. Everybody from Greg Errico of Sly and the Family Stone. Robert Trujillo of Metallica and Linda Ronstadt, among others.
En la noche silenciosa. That last name may come as a surprise to some.
Mariachi, my family are Mexican, and that is my roots.
From her grandfather and previous generations, and recorded an entire album, kind of celebrating her roots.
Precious artifacts help tell these inductees' stories, like Trujillo's bass guitar, the satin vest worn by Errico, and
in our brand new Play It Loud special exhibit, we feature the famous Wolf guitar by Jerry Garcia of the Grateful Dead.
Director of Fan Experience John Gerke says the Dead fostered a powerful communal aspect.
Jerry Garcia always talked about how he tried to break down those barriers between performer and audience. It was more about we are all sharing in this experience together.
One musician that Gerke says certainly has shared his heritage is Carlos Santana.
These collaborations, it's doing what we see in music today. It's introducing his music to the fan bases of these other artists and vice versa.
Pre-pandemic, the museum has participated in events like the annual Latino Heritage Fest. But in today's world, they encourage people to make use of their free online educational resources.
Rock and roll has never been one thing. It's never looked one way. It's never sounded one way. If you have one image of rock and roll, I would encourage you to broaden that representation.
In Cleveland, Alex Stokes, Fox 8 News.
Carlos Santana was the first Hispanic Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductee. He was honored in 1998.
We want to thank you for taking this journey with us. We hoped you learned a lot about the Hispanic Heritage Line right in your backyard.
And although we've highlighted just a few, there are still hundreds, thousands more moments waiting to be discovered, moments you might discover yourself if you look closely enough. I'm Karina Rubio.
And I'm Paul Cicchini. Thanks for joining us.
This has been Hispanic Heritage, a special presentation of WCIA 3.